Next up are the ownership structure module and the principal information module. Focusing on the ownership structure module first. So this is very important for three reasons. So first, you want to figure out whether the company has a large financial backer behind it with a large stake in the company that might give them financial firepower should they run into any kind of operational trouble in Africa. So a company that belongs to a large international group, say possibly one of the big mining companies, for example, might present less of a risk than a small independent company that has not been around for that many years. Secondly, to know the shareholders and the holding companies and the ultimate holding companies is a protection against reputational risks. So you have an additional set of names that you can check against global databases, for example, or to do desktop research on, or to figure out if there are any indications that there might be shell companies sitting on this among the shareholders of the company, which could represent hidden risks because you don't know who is actually pulling the strings behind this company. And then thirdly, there is the very important element, especially as you're doing business in Africa, around conflict of interests. So you might want to do some name matching here and cross-check these names against your employees and directors so that all the selection and the handling of the transactions related to this vendor have been above board. Moving on to the principal information module, we have data here that can help you identify four major risk categories. The first one might be reputational risks attached to any of these directors. By giving you the name and the ID number, you have some unique identifiers that you can use to either check against global databases or to conduct your own desktop research. The fields here on the right-hand side give you an idea of how highly exposed the directors are to other companies by showing their active business interest as well as their previous business interest, as well as judgments against themselves as consumers and fraud listings that they might appear as. You'll see here that this director has a judgment against her, and hence we have flagged this with an exclamation mark. You may regard this as a risk element, or you may say, hey, no, that's fine. The rest of the company looks solid. I'm not overly concerned about this. So this is one of those situations where it really depends on your context. This one has a red flag against them because in the business status that we receive from the registrar of companies, this person has actually been disqualified as a director. It's been flagged as a disqualified director, indicating that the government does not see this person fit to serve on the board of directors of any company in South Africa. Fields here on the right-hand side point more towards integrity risks attached to the directors. Moving on to the performance side, so things you might want to look out for is directors that are very young. So you could, for example, derive the date of birth here from the ID number. In other African countries, we would show you the date of birth here in these fields. So indicating that, for example, directors that are very young in particular industries might point to a risk due to lack of experience. However, if you're looking at, for example, a tech startup company, that might actually be considered an asset. We've also inserted a principal analytics module just below those principal details, which gives you a couple of KPIs to look at. So for example, the average tenure per principal, it's an important metric here because you can see how long has this board been actually in place. So a very short period of time, you say 3 months, would either point to the fact that the board has only been recently appointed, or that there's been a drastic turnover in the board. So both of these instances should raise questions. You might want to look at when this company was established to see if there has been some kind of VEE deal happening, for example, or was there a big shuffle up of the board due to lack of performance, or other risk indicators. The second part here, the total tenure, just tells you overall how much experience does this board have if you combine the tenure of all of the directors, the active directors of the board currently. So, 51 years in total, it's quite a lot of experience that has been amassed here on this board. The Director Singularity Index, which is unfortunately not calculating on this report because it's based on dummy data and this is an automatically generated report. This is a risk indicator which measures how highly exposed this board is to other boards of companies in South Africa and how they rank then within the overall population of South African directors. So what this means in short is if you have a rating of 10, your directors are highly exposed to other boards of companies, and in South Africa that can mean a lot. It can mean up to 80, up to 100 other boards of companies, which means that there's a high likelihood that there might be conflicts of interest or that the guys are actually overexposed and not able to effectively serve as board members of all of these companies. On the other hand, a low DSI indicates that the directors of the company serve on very few other boards. They're very focused on this company. If this company goes bust, they might actually they might put up their own property, their own assets to save this company. So in general, a very high DSI can point to higher risk. And in fact, it should be noted that we have found a significant correlation between a high DSI and the likelihood to incur a judgment, which again is highly linked to the likelihood of financial distress. And lastly, we've listed, again, this is mostly in South Africa. We might get it in some other African countries, but in South Africa we have listed the active and previous business interests of the various directors, and we will give you information on whether these previous interests or active interests have judgments against them. It again might be an indicator for performance if a director is incurring judgments left, right, and center on the other business interests, that they might be defocused, that they are not very effective on the board, and that this company might be next in terms of facing financial trouble. So the last factors I've mentioned around the business interests, the principal analytics, and some of the principal details have all been centered around performance-related issues. I just want to return to the issue of conflicts of interest for a moment. As with the shareholding information, the principals details, we've given you the names and unique identifiers, enable you to cross-check your current or previous employee and director lists with these names to find out if there are any undeclared associations that might have contributed to fraudulent or wasteful activity in your supply chain. If you really want to take the conflict of interest check one step further, I recommend that you look at another tool of ours, the Inoxico matrix, which allows you to visualize associations between your employees and directors, or their next of kin, and your vendors. So this is these are associations on the first level. We can take this up to the second level to show you indirect associations held via, for example, directorships, or you can even take it to the third level if you really want to know what's going on in your tenders and who sits behind certain deals. Lastly, I just want to mention that from a verification perspective, shareholding information is very difficult to get a hold of in South Africa. You typically require access to the company secretary to see this kind of information, as it is not generally disclosed via CIPC. In the rest of Africa, it is possible to at least see initial shareholding from the registrar documentation in most cases, but then again, that is an on-the-ground exercise. For the principals details, again, this information mostly comes fresh off CIPC, although we do cross-verify it with the companies. And again, in Africa, you will see the directors, the registered directors, when you go and search the files at the registrar of companies. It's just worthwhile mentioning that in Africa, again, a lot of this data will have discrepancies with what the company tells you, but it's very useful to cross-reference this information with the companies, as usually that then leads to a conversation, and then more information emerges around shareholders that they've forgotten to mention or that have recently changed, and so that gives you a couple of additional names, and it does help to tell the companies that this information is verified with the official authorities as well. So that concludes the section on the ownership structure and the principal information module.